The cold of space pressed against Lyra's small ship as she drifted aimlessly through the empty void. Elythra, her homeworld, had seemed so close just hours ago, yet now it felt impossibly far. Her ship's engines had failed during the survey mission, and the emergency thrusters could only keep her from tumbling endlessly into the asteroid belt nearby. She floated in silence, her thoughts echoing in the narrow cabin. Her species had always trusted logic and preparation. Elythrans planned for every eventuality. Yet somehow, Lyra had ended up alone and helpless in a human-controlled sector. Fear gripped her chest as she scanned the stars, looking for anything familiar. None came. The blackness stretched endlessly, dotted only by distant suns and glimmering debris. She wished she could hear the soft songs of Elythra's rivers or the gentle hum of its forests. Here, there was nothing but cold metal and empty space. A sudden jolt shook her pod, and alarms blared. She pressed a button, trying to stabilize the craft, but the main console flickered and died. Lyra's heart pounded faster. If she stayed here, she would drift until the void claimed her. But what other choice did she have? Panic clawed at her, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, focusing on what she could control. Her pod had a distress beacon, one designed to reach Elythra, though its signals were weak in human space. She activated it anyway, hoping for a miracle. Hours passed, and nothing responded. Lyra tried to sleep, but the constant hum of malfunctioning systems and the oppressive loneliness made it impossible. She stared through the thick viewports at the dark void outside. She whispered to herself in Elythron, a quiet mantra she had learned as a child. Even in darkness, light exists. Even in fear, courage persists. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the distance, a tiny speck at first, then larger as it approached. Her sensors blinked rapidly. Another ship. She tried to communicate, sending signals in multiple universal codes, hoping that whoever it was could understand. The shadow grew closer, revealing the unmistakable shape of a human patrol vessel. Lyra's heart leaped. Humans were unpredictable, often aggressive, and she had no way of knowing if this one was friendly. Stories from Elythra described humans as chaotic, sometimes violent, and often driven by emotion rather than reason. She swallowed her fear and prepared for any outcome. The vessel stopped near her pod, and a hatch opened. A human figure appeared tall, with short brown hair and calm, observant eyes. He wore a uniform marked with insignia she did not recognize. His hands were raised slightly in a universal gesture of peace. Lyra felt something she had not expected. Relief. Perhaps not safety, but relief that she was no longer entirely alone. "Hello?" the human said, his voice cautious, but clear. "Are you okay?" She stared at him, unsure how to respond. Words were difficult, and her voice came out in broken Elythran. He tilted his head, listening, then reached for a small device on his wrist and tapped it. Words appeared on a holographic screen. "I don't understand you. Can you communicate?" End quote. Quote. Lyra shook her head and gestured to her pod. He seemed to understand. Slowly, he moved closer, holding out a small tool. "I'll help you," he said gently. "Just stay calm." The human's calmness was soothing. Lyra's breathing slowed as he opened the hatch and helped her out of the damaged pod. He adjusted her small oxygen pack, making sure she could breathe comfortably. The air felt strange, heavier than Elythra's, but tolerable. Her body had not adjusted, and yet she could manage it with his help. He led her aboard his ship, moving carefully to ensure she didn't stumble. Lyra noticed the vessel was unlike any human design she had studied from afar. Sleek lines, functional panels, and a bridge filled with displays and controls. Humans were primitive, yet she saw intelligence in their design. Practical, resourceful, and efficient. The human guided her to a medical chamber. It was small, but equipped with devices she recognized from her studies of human medicine. He gestured for her to lie down. Lyra hesitated. Trust did not come easily to her species. But the gentle firmness in his eyes, and the way he moved with precision, without threatening her, nudged her to obey. He adjusted monitors and sensors, scanning her body carefully. Lyra noticed how different humans were, their movements less fluid than hers, more rigid, yet purposeful. He didn't rush, didn't panic, even though the situation could have been dangerous. Slowly, she began to relax, feeling the tension in her limbs release. Hours passed, and they did not speak much. Lyra observed him as he worked, fascinated by his attention to detail and patience. He didn't speak much, yet the occasional words, "Almost done," "Steady," reassured her. She realized that humans, though seemingly impulsive and emotional, could be remarkably disciplined when needed. When she finally felt strong enough to sit, he handed her a small cup of water. Lyra's eyes widened at the gesture. She had not expected kindness in a human. On Elithra, survival was often a solitary matter, with assistance given only when absolutely necessary. Here, this stranger offered help freely, without expectation. They began to communicate slowly, using gestures, symbols, and rudimentary translations. Lyra learned his name was Aaron Blake. He asked her questions she didn't understand. But through patience and repeated gestures, she conveyed her name, and that she was far from her homeworld. Aaron listened, nodding, never showing impatience. For the first time since leaving Elithra, Lyra felt a strange warmth, not the heat of a sun or the glow of a forest, but something deeper, a feeling of safety. The human did not speak her language, but his presence was comforting. She realized she could survive here, at least temporarily, because of him. As they traveled toward the nearest space station, Lyra watched the stars streak by through the ship's large viewport. She had always thought of humans as impulsive and dangerous, yet Aaron's actions contradicted that. Perhaps her species' view of humans had been incomplete. Perhaps there was more to them than Elethran scholars had believed. Suddenly, a warning signal blared. Lyra's body tensed. Aaron moved quickly, checking the readouts. A rogue asteroid cluster was moving toward their path, uncharted and dangerous. He glanced at her briefly. "Stay back," he said firmly, taking control of the navigation console. Lyra marveled at his skill. He maneuvered the ship through the jagged rocks with precision, making split-second decisions. She could not help but admire his bravery. She realized that humans, for all their seeming recklessness, had the ability to act decisively when faced with danger. After several tense minutes, the ship cleared the cluster. Lyra exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Aaron smiled briefly, almost shyly, as if to reassure her that everything was okay. Lyra felt her chest swell with gratitude. This human had saved her life twice in a matter of hours. Later, as the emergency lights dimmed and the ship returned to its steady hum, Lyra found a quiet corner to rest. She could feel her strength returning. Her thoughts drifted to Elithra, to the rivers and forests she missed so dearly. Yet, for the first time, she thought about humans, not as strangers or threats, but as potential allies, even friends. Aaron came to check on her periodically, offering water, adjusting her oxygen, or simply standing nearby. She noticed he didn't crowd her space. He understood boundaries, even for someone of a different species. Lyra realized that trust was forming a slow, careful trust that bridged worlds. She wondered what her people would think if they could see her now, resting in a human ship, alive and unharmed. Surely, they would be astonished. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but here was proof that they could be noble, kind, and protective. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt a sense of possibility. Perhaps, even far from home, she could find safety, companionship, and understanding. Perhaps this human, Aaron, was the first step toward a new chapter in her life. The stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, a tapestry of light against the darkness. Lyra watched them, feeling the cold of space soften around her. Here, with Aaron nearby, she was not alone. Here, she could breathe. Here, she could hope. And for the first time since the accident, she allowed herself to close her eyes and rest, knowing that someone watched over her, not with suspicion, but with care. Someone believed in her survival, even when the universe seemed indifferent. In the quiet of the ship, drifting among the stars, Lyra whispered a single thought in Elithran. Even in darkness, light exists. And in the presence of a human she barely knew, that light began to shine. The human ship glided through the quiet expanse of space, leaving the asteroid belt far behind. Lyra sat near the viewport, her long fingers tracing patterns on the smooth glass. Outside, stars streaked past as the ship moved steadily toward the distant repair station. She had learned to trust the gentle hum of the ship, the rhythmic pulse of life support systems, and, most of all, the presence of the human named Aaron. At first, communication had been slow and awkward. Lyra's language was alien to him, full of sounds that humans could not replicate. Aaron's words were simple, clipped, and careful. Yet slowly, through gestures, symbols, and repeated attempts, they began to understand each other. A nod, a tilt of the head, or the pointing of a finger often replaced words. One evening, as the artificial lights of the cabin dimmed for rest, Aaron placed a small tray in front of her. It held food she had never seen before, soft, square slices of bread with something warm and soft inside. He watched her cautiously, as if waiting to see how she would react. Lyra hesitated, touching it tentatively with her fingers. The aroma was strange but inviting. Slowly, she tasted it. Her eyes widened, and she made a small sound of surprise. Aaron smiled. He did not expect praise. He only wanted to make her feel safe. In that simple act, Lyra realized that kindness could be universal, transcending species or worlds. As the days passed, they settled into a routine. Aaron would navigate the ship, maintain the engines, and occasionally check on her, while Lyra studied the human environment, curious about everything she could see. She watched his hands adjust controls, admired how he thought quickly when something went wrong, and noted the careful precision of his movements. Humans were different, yes, but perhaps not as simple as Elithran scholars had suggested. The repair station finally came into view, a distant cluster of lights floating against the black canvas of space. Lyra felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. Humans often feared aliens, and these humans could be hostile. Yet Aaron's presence beside her offered reassurance. When they docked, engineers rushed to meet them, tools in hand. Lyra felt a spike of anxiety as they looked her over with suspicion. They whispered among themselves, pointing at her features and strange markings. Aaron placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "She's under my protection," he said calmly. "Do not touch her." Without permission. The engineers hesitated, and Aaron led her into a quieter area. Lyra watched him with growing respect. On Elithra, authority was strict and unquestioned. Here, a single human could defy the many, simply because he understood right from wrong. She felt a new admiration growing in her chest, something she had never expected to feel for another species. Days turned into a week as the engineers examined her ship's data and worked on repairs. Lyra stayed aboard Aaron's ship, learning more about him with each passing day. She discovered that humans, while sometimes reckless, had a remarkable ability to adapt and solve problems. He taught her small words, simple gestures, and ways to navigate human technology. In return, she shared glimpses of Elithra, how the forests sang in colors beyond human vision, how rivers glowed under their moonlight, and how her people celebrated life through quiet harmony. One afternoon, while the repair teams were busy, Lyra wandered to the observation deck. She stared at the stars and planets, letting memories of home fill her mind. Aaron joined her silently, offering no words but a comforting presence. She realized that this silent companionship was valuable. Sometimes, words were unnecessary. Understanding could exist simply through shared, quiet moments. "Are you okay?" Aaron finally asked, his voice low and cautious. Lyra turned to him, unsure if she could answer in his language. She placed a hand over her chest and nodded. Then, in her own tongue, she whispered, "I am learning to be safe here." Aaron didn't understand the words, but he saw the meaning. He nodded slowly, his expression softening. Lyra felt a warmth that was new and unfamiliar. She was far from Elithra, yet for the first time, she felt that distance shrink. Perhaps home was not only a place, but also a person who made you feel understood. Trouble came unexpectedly. A group of scavenger ships approached the station, their intentions clear from the way they moved: aggressive, calculating, and reckless. The engineers panicked, but Aaron remained calm. He guided Lyra to the ship's small cockpit, explaining gestures she could understand. "Follow my lead," he said, pointing to controls. "We move fast, we stay low, and we protect each other." Lyra's body tensed, but she obeyed. She realized that trust had deepened. She was no longer simply a guest aboard a human ship. She was a partner, capable of acting in harmony with him. Together, they maneuvered through the station's outer defenses, dodging incoming fire and weaving between obstacles. Aaron's skill and Lyra's quick reflexes combined into something greater than either could achieve alone. After the immediate danger passed, they found a quiet spot in the station's hangar. Lyra's body hummed with adrenaline, and she realized that fear had shifted into exhilaration. Aaron glanced at her, noticing the mixture of relief and newfound confidence in her expression. "You're brave," he said quietly, almost to himself. Lyra understood the meaning without words. She felt her chest swell with pride. For the first time, she realized that humans could inspire courage, not only through their actions, but by trusting others to act alongside them. Later, as the station's artificial night cycle began, Aaron and Lyra returned to the observation deck. She watched the stars, reflecting on the events of the past days. Fear had dominated her since leaving Elithra, but now she felt a steady pulse of something stronger. Trust. Trust in this human, in herself, and in the idea that survival did not always require solitude. Aaron remained beside her, silently offering protection. Lyra dared a small smile. It was the first in days. She could feel the bond forming between them. A bond built not on words, but on shared experience, understanding, and quiet respect. As they prepared to leave the station, Lyra noticed something remarkable. Humans, despite their flaws, could act with honor. They could protect, teach, and offer comfort without expectation. Aaron exemplified this in ways she had never imagined possible. She realized that her perception of humans had been incomplete, shaped by rumors and distant observation. Now, she had seen their potential firsthand. Their journey continued through remote star systems, each new world teaching Lyra more about humans and herself. She observed how Aaron adapted to new situations, how he solved problems with creativity and determination, and how he treated all beings, even aliens, with cautious respect. Lyra felt her admiration deepen, tempered by gratitude. One quiet moment. They drifted near a small, glowing nebula. Lyra floated close to the viewport, marveling at the colors. Aaron joined her, pointing to patterns in the gas clouds, explaining how humans interpreted light and energy. Lyra watched him carefully. He was patient, deliberate, and attentive. She felt a gentle comfort in his presence, as if danger could never touch her while he was near. "Do you like it here?" Aaron asked after a while. His voice soft, almost hesitant. Lyra paused. The nebula glowed before her eyes, yet her thoughts went beyond its beauty. She placed her hand over her chest and nodded slowly. Words were not enough to explain what she felt: a sense of safety, a budding trust, and a strange warmth she had never experienced. Aaron understood. He smiled faintly, as if acknowledging something delicate yet important. Over the next few days, they practiced small routines together. Lyra learned to operate some human instruments, guided by Aaron's careful instruction. In return, she shared insights into alien technology and strategies she had observed on her homeworld. They became a team, not out of necessity, but out of mutual respect. Each task they completed together strengthened the connection between them. Yet, the universe was never without danger. Rumors of bounty hunters and scavengers circulated through the station's communication channels. Lyra understood enough to know that her species' technology was valuable, and that not all humans would be as kind or honorable as Aaron. She felt a flutter of fear, but this time it was tempered by confidence. She had learned to trust, and she knew Aaron would not abandon her. One evening, while the station's artificial lights dimmed for rest, Lyra lay near the viewport. She watched the stars streak past as Aaron adjusted course. The gentle hum of the ship was a lullaby, and she realized that she no longer felt entirely like an alien in this strange place. She felt connected to Aaron, to the ship, and to a small glimmer of possibility. "Thank you," she whispered in Elithran, her words soft but sincere. Aaron glanced at her, curious, and nodded. He did not understand the language, but he felt the meaning. The gesture alone was enough. Lyra felt a deep warmth in her chest, a quiet reminder that kindness and trust could bridge worlds. As they moved further from the station and deeper into human space, Lyra allowed herself to imagine a future she had never dared to dream of. Perhaps humans were not only unpredictable or chaotic. Perhaps they could offer comfort, protection, and companionship in ways her species had never experienced. And in the quiet of the ship, surrounded by stars, Lyra felt something remarkable. Hope that even far from her home, she could survive. Hope that even among humans, she could find friendship. Hope that even in a vast and lonely universe, she might find someone to stand beside her, someone whose presence could make her heart feel safe. The distant glow of the rescue fleet flickered on the horizon, slowly approaching from human space. Lyra's heart beat faster as she stared at the small lights, knowing they were sent from Elithra. Her people had finally located her, after weeks of searching. Relief and excitement should have filled her, but instead, she felt something far more complicated. Aaron noticed her gaze and placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You've been quiet," he said softly, reading her thoughts without words. Lyra turned to him, her large eyes reflecting both fear and uncertainty. She had survived the vast emptiness of space, faced danger alongside humans, and learned their ways. She had grown stronger, braver, and more resilient. And through it all, Aaron had been there guiding her, protecting her, teaching her to trust again. The fleet drew closer, small ships glinting in the sunlight. Communication channels buzzed with Elithron voices, filled with concern and urgency. They had come to bring her home. Lyra's chest tightened. Home. Elithra. The forests. The rivers. The soft, luminescent light of her world. She longed to see it again, to feel the familiar harmony of her people. Yet she realized something she had not expected. For the first time since leaving her planet, she felt that home could be something different. A person. A bond. A place where her heart felt safe. Aaron watched her, giving her space yet remaining close enough that she could reach out if she wanted. "You know you can go with them," he said gently. "They'll take you home." Lyra nodded slowly. She knew this. Her people had come for her. They had always been dependable, loyal, and gentle in their way. Yet the idea of returning to Elithra felt heavier than she expected. She had grown, changed, and learned to feel trust in a human, something she never imagined possible. The Elithran fleet arrived at the outpost, their ships shining with ethereal light. Lyra could see the small figures of her people moving aboard the transports, ready to greet her, ready to take her home. A part of her longed for that familiar warmth, the embrace of her elders, the soft songs of her rivers, the soothing light of Elithra's skies. But another part of her remained uncertain. Could she truly return, knowing that her heart had changed? Could she go back to a world where humans were stories told from afar, rather than the living beings who had taught her courage, patience, and trust? Aaron stepped closer. "Whatever you choose, I won't interfere," he said quietly. "But know that I'll be here, if you stay." Lyra's eyes filled with emotion. The human had offered her protection without expectation, guidance without judgment, and comfort without pressure. He had become more than a savior. He had become a companion, a friend, and perhaps something even deeper, though she dared not name it. She walked to the viewport, watching the Elithran fleet approach. Her people would welcome her back with open arms, but she realized that a part of her heart had already found a new home among humans. With Aaron, the rescue fleet landed at the outpost, their vessels humming with soft energy. Lyra's people disembarked quickly, their glowing forms moving gracefully. They approached her ship, calling her name, their voices filled with relief and joy. Lyra stepped forward to meet them. Her heart ached with longing and confusion. They wrapped her in warm embraces, asking questions, sharing stories, and expressing their joy at finding her alive. Yet as she looked at Aaron standing quietly nearby, she felt a tug in her chest that she could not ignore. One of her elders, a wise figure with soft, luminescent markings, stepped forward. "You have survived. You have learned. Tell us, what have you found in the stars?" Lyra turned to Aaron, then back to her elder. She realized that her answer would not only define her path forward, but also honor everything she had experienced. She took a deep breath, her chest filling with steady courage. "I have found many things," she said slowly. "I have found that even in the coldest, darkest parts of space, there can be kindness. I have learned that trust can exist between very different beings. And I have found comfort in someone who was not of my world, yet became my friend, my companion, my protector." Her people looked at her with gentle surprise. They had expected joy at her return, but her words spoke of something else: connection, understanding, and a choice that could not be dictated by duty alone. Aaron stepped forward, his voice calm and quiet. "I will not hold you here. You belong wherever you choose. But I hope that you find what makes your heart feel safe." Lyra's heart swelled. She had never felt so torn, yet so certain. Elithra was beautiful, familiar, and waiting for her. Yet the bond she had formed with Aaron was undeniable. He had been her guide, her shield, and her anchor when she felt adrift. She turned to the Elithran fleet, her hands raised in a gesture of peace and gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply, "for finding me, for caring for me. But I have found another path. I have found a place I can call home. Here, with someone who has shown me kindness, courage, and trust." The elders studied her, their expression calm but wise. "Then you have chosen your heart," they said. "It is brave, and it is yours. Go where you must, child." Relief and quiet joy filled Lyra's chest. She stepped back toward Aaron, whose eyes reflected both pride and gentle understanding. They walked side by side through the outpost, past the Elithran fleet, past the curious humans and alien technology, and into the waiting corridor of Aaron's ship. As the doors closed behind them, Lyra felt the weight of her choice settle into something warm and steady. She was no longer far from home. She was with someone who valued her life, respected her being, and offered companionship without demand. Aaron guided her to the observation deck, and they stood together, watching the stars move outside. Lyra reached for his hand, a small but significant gesture. He took it carefully, allowing her to feel the connection without words. "You're home now," he said softly. Lyra smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Yes," she whispered. "I am home." The fleet behind them prepared to depart, leaving the two alone in the vast expanse of space. For the first time since she left Elithra, Lyra felt fully safe, fully understood, and fully alive. She realized that home was not just a place, but a presence, a bond that could bridge worlds. As the stars streaked past, Lyra leaned slightly against Aaron, feeling the quiet hum of the ship beneath them. She had faced fear, danger, and isolation. And yet here she was, alive, empowered, and at peace. Aaron looked at her with a faint smile. "We'll face the future together," he said. "Whatever it holds." Lyra nodded, her heart steady and her mind clear. She no longer feared the unknown. The universe was vast, and they were small. Yet together, they could face it. She realized that courage, trust, and compassion were not bound to one world. They could exist anywhere, even in the space between stars. And so, far from her alien home, surrounded by the infinite expanse of the galaxy, Lyra had found what she had been searching for all along: comfort, safety, and belonging not in a planet or a place, but in the arms of a human who had shown her the best of his species. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt truly at home. And as the ship moved onward through the stars, she allowed herself to dream of the future. A future shared, hopeful, and boundless, where she no longer needed to choose between worlds. She had found a new one, and in that world, she was not alone.